There's also been a lot of comments recently that this M2 is a giveaway car. And if you were one of those people who was commenting that, you'd be correct.
Most people look at TJ Hunt and see the dream. The supercars, the garage, the brand, the life that millions would trade anything to have. What they don't see is the phone call that made all of it feel worthless in an instant. One call, and everything he had spent a decade grinding to build collapsed down to a single question that no subscriber count, no car collection, and no business empire can answer.
Today's video was really hard. Talking about it so much today, just with real life, and Sabrina talking about it on the vlog. And for the first time I spoke about our current situation on Instagram, and I haven't really been honest with you guys or shown anything at all.
That is the part of this story nobody talks about. TJ Hunt built something real from nothing. And then life handed him something that had nothing to do with cars, nothing to do with YouTube, and everything to do with what actually matters when the cameras stop rolling. This is the heartbreaking story of TJ Hunt, the kid with no business. Thomas Hunt was born December 28, 1994 in Montreal, Canada. He grew up there, a teenager who loved cars and cameras, which at the time was not a career path. It was just what he was into. When he was still in high school, he started a YouTube channel under the name Iron Men Fan 1 and uploaded his first video in November 2009. It was about paintball, not cars, paintball.
I got a Bad Rotor NT. I got a Pure Energy 5045 tank running at about, I don't know if you can see that, just a bit over 2000, 2001. I'm gonna do a little shooting on it.
For starters, the channel had no real identity. He reviewed gear, unboxed equipment, posted the kinds of videos a teenager makes when he has a camera, and nothing in particular to say yet. And then, here's the part most people skip over. He disappeared for 3 years. No uploads, no explanation. The channel just went dark. That 3-year gap matters more than it sounds. Because when TJ came back in 2014, he came back to something he had not trained for, had not studied, and had no credentials in: building and modifying cars on camera. His family had moved him from Montreal to San Diego, California. He had enrolled in school, and somewhere in that transition, the car culture of Southern California got under his skin and didn't let go. His first real car video, BMW 328i Performance Exhaust and Intake, uploaded in January 2014, was not the work of someone who knew what they were doing. It was the work of someone who was curious, who had a camera, and who was willing to figure it out in public.
Someone had asked me to make a video of the exhaust and intake I have in my car, so I decided why not make a video about it. I know it's not what I focused on in the past, but it's been a couple years, so yeah, here's a clip.
He attended Del Norte High School and later California State University, but the education that built his career happened in garages, not classrooms. Here's what that actually meant in practice. Learning to build and modify cars through trial and error is one thing when you are doing it in a private garage with no audience. It is something completely different when you are doing it on camera, uploading the process every week, and asking hundreds of thousands of people to watch you figure out things you have not figured out yet. The internet is not a patient classroom. Every stumble is archived. Every mistake lives permanently on the channel, searchable, shareable, ready to be clipped and criticized at any point by anyone who wants to demonstrate why you do not know what you were doing. What most people don't realize is that every mistake he made learning how to build cars, every wrong turn, every part that didn't fit, every modification that went sideways, was documented, permanently, on a public platform, in front of an audience that was growing fast enough that the mistakes were reaching more and more people every week. Car enthusiasts are not forgiving. The community that TJ was building his career inside of had strong opinions, deep technical knowledge, and a comment section. The pressure to improve was not internal. It was constant and public and came from every direction.
Before we install the new bag system, we have to add in our new hoses. And be sure before you put new hoses in, you want to be putting in thread sealant. That is very important. Do not forget that step.
He has talked openly about the criticism that followed him through those early years, the judgment that was there every single time he hit upload. He kept uploading anyway, not because he had it all figured out, because he simply didn't have a choice. He had committed to this in public, which meant the only direction was forward. How a dream becomes a treadmill. Here's the part of TJ Hunt's story that the highlight reel will never show you, and it is the part that explains everything else. As the channel grew, TJ didn't just build a following, he built obligations. Every new car was a new financial commitment. Every new build was a new promise to an audience that had come to expect a specific level of content at a specific pace. And every new vehicle in the collection was a new line item in a budget that was already running at a scale most people cannot picture. The crazy part is that the success itself is what made everything harder to sustain.
Here's an example of the secondary oil return off of one of the turbos that we are now no longer using. So just being able to have a very low mile car and do all this work is kind of super satisfying.
Consider how that math works. A channel built on supercars and exotic builds requires exotic cars to build, which means buying them, insuring them, storing them, modifying them, and then doing it again. The content demands the cars demand the money demands the content. There is no version of the TJ Hunt channel that exists without the financial engine running at full speed. And there is no version of the financial engine that runs without the channel performing consistently enough to fund it. It is not a flywheel, it is a locked loop. By the time TJ launched the Hunt & Company, his clothing and lifestyle brand, and then Street Hunter Designs, his aerodynamics and car parts company, he had crossed from content creator into business owner, with employees, overhead, manufacturing relationships, and financial obligations that did not pause when the algorithm dipped or inspiration ran dry. Sabrina Liaman had come on as COO of the Hunt & Company. The enterprise had outgrown what one person could manage and was now a full operation that needed to run whether or not TJ felt like filming. And then there's the number. In a podcast interview with the Life Wide Open show from C-Boys TV, TJ Hunt disclosed something about his annual costs that stopped the hosts cold. And get this, he pays over $360,000 per year in car insurance alone. Not the builds, not the parts, not the shop overhead or the staff, payroll or the content production costs. Just the insurance on the collection each year. Think about what $360,000 a year actually means. That is more than most working families will earn in 3 to 4 years. It is more than the purchase price of most homes in large parts of this country. And for TJ Hunt, it is a recurring annual expense that exists whether he makes a good video this week or a bad one, whether the algorithm rewards him or punishes him, whether he is inspired or completely depleted. That's putting it lightly. Because what that figure actually represents is a financial floor, a minimum cost of maintaining the lifestyle that is the entire foundation of the content that pays for the lifestyle.
Before we'll install this, we'll probably try to insert all of the lights because my experience with aftermarket trunks is you usually have to clean up a little bit of these. They won't fit exactly perfect. So we'll start there so that we can fill in and then try to reinstall the new trunk onto the car.
The cars are not a reward. They are collateral. The channel is not a passion project anymore. It is the engine that pays for the obligation to keep running the engine. That treadmill doesn't have an off switch. And the faster it runs, the harder it becomes to step off, without losing everything. What a week actually looks like. What most people don't realize is that TJ Hunt's week looks nothing like what his channel makes it look like. In a detailed interview with Driving Line, TJ described the actual texture of his working life in terms that are worth paying attention to. He said he is running multiple businesses, managing multiple employees, maintaining multiple timelines, staying on target for video schedules, all while integrating corporate and racing schedules and operating a shop. And with YouTube specifically, he said, if you can't do it fast, you can't be successful. But you also have to be fast and good, because everything is documented. A mistake on camera isn't just a mistake. It is a permanent, searchable, commentable piece of content. Picture what a week in that life actually feels like. You wake up with a build in progress, a deadline for a video that has to go up regardless of whether the build is done, a sponsor deliverable that has to be honored, a staff that needs direction, an insurance bill that renews in 30 days, and a comment section full of opinions about everything you did wrong in the last upload. The car you were supposed to have finished for this week's video has a parts delay. The parts company has a supplier question. The clothing line has a fulfillment problem. And somewhere in between all of that, you are supposed to be a creative person who produces content that feels spontaneous and genuine to millions of people watching from their couches. And then you do it again the next week, and the week after, for years.
This fits so incredibly well.
That is so good.
I love the Sencal side skirt because it's like just enough, but not too much. Like it's just a little bridge.
I enjoy this cut in here.
Dude,
TJ said it plainly in that same interview. It takes every ounce of effort you've got to be successful. The work/life balance is the toughest part. It is very easy to spend too much time working. But here's the catch. Too much time working is not a warning TJ can afford to fully heed. Because this is not a job where you clock out and the cost structure pauses. The expenses continue. The audience expects consistency. The algorithm punishes absence. And the businesses, the clothing line, the parts company, the shop, do not self-manage. In the C-Boys TV podcast, TJ went further than he usually does publicly. He talked about the real possibility of quitting YouTube, not as a dramatic exit announcement, but as something he had genuinely considered. A decade of grinding at this pace had left him running on something that was starting to feel less like passion and more like obligation. The burnout conversations that creators usually have in private, TJ was willing to have out loud. That kind of honesty doesn't happen unless something is real. He had built the dream, he was living inside it, and it was exhausting in ways that the dream was never supposed to be. 7 days without answers. This is the part the channel never showed you. In 2020, Sabrina suffered a seizure at work and was taken to the hospital. But this was not the first time her body had sent that warning. She had experienced fogginess and anxiety before her first seizure hit. The second came over a year later, and this time, what came with it was a diagnosis neither of them was prepared for: brain cancer. Specifically, a grade 2 diffuse glioma. Sabrina was in her early 20s. She was the COO of the company they had built together. She was his partner, the person who appeared in his videos, and ran the business side of the brand and had been beside him through the entire climb from nobody to 2 million subscribers. And she was now sitting in a hospital bed with a brain cancer diagnosis.
I had a seizure on July 8th, which led them to finding a mass on my right temporal lobe area. I was in the hospital for like 6-ish days. They ended up doing a biopsy, so surgery to remove a little portion.
TJ revealed that Sabrina was hospitalized for 7 days after the seizure. 7 days. During that time, the upload schedule didn't care. The insurance didn't pause. The employees still needed direction. The businesses still ran. What most accounts of this story don't slow down long enough to ask is, what was TJ doing during those 7 days? What does it look like to be the person running an empire that cannot stop, while the most important person in that empire is in a hospital room waiting for test results? He had spent years building something that depended on him showing up every week, no matter what. The channel was not just a creative outlet by this point. It was payroll. It was the engine that funded the insurance, the builds, the staff, the parts company, the clothing line. The machine did not have a pause button, and the person who had been running the other half of that machine was in a hospital bed. There is no public documentation of those specific 7 days in granular detail. What we do know is that TJ and Sabrina made a deliberate choice to bring their audience into the journey rather than hide from it. Sabrina described it herself. We share our life for a living, so we were like, do we want to talk about this personal part? And I said yes. The message behind the channel is keep moving forward through whatever life throws at you. What followed was a 17-hour brain surgery performed by a team at UC San Diego Health.
The overall strategy for how we were going to attack this tumor in her brain, I was very confident in telling her that I was able to offer her not only the most cutting-edge surgery and technology that's available in the region, but also a cancer treatment that's as unique as both she and her tumor are.
Surgeons were able to remove all but 4% of the tumor, improving Sabrina's projected survival from an estimated 22 months to around 15 years. She did not need chemotherapy or radiation. She was discharged 2 days after the surgery, Those are the medical facts, and they are genuinely hopeful. But here's the thing about hopeful facts. They do not erase the terror of the days before you have them. There is one detail from this period that tells you more about TJ Hunt than anything else in this story. After the diagnosis, Sabrina's driver's license was suspended due to the seizure risk her condition carried. She had to give up the car she'd been driving. And TJ, in the middle of the diagnosis, the surgery timeline, the hospital visits, the businesses he was still running, and everything else, went to a Porsche dealership and bought her the car she had always talked about wanting. A Porsche Macan, fully optioned, exactly as they had discussed. It's not a flex, it's not content. It is a man doing the only concrete, meaningful thing he could do for someone he loved when everything important was completely out of his control, when you cannot control the diagnosis, when you cannot control the surgery, when you cannot control the outcome. You go buy the car she always wanted, because at least that is something real you can do right now. That is not the action of a YouTube personality managing his brand. That is a person. And that distinction between the public persona and the actual human being is what this entire story has been circling. What the highlight reel was never going to tell you. It's not that simple, though. The story of TJ Hunt is not a tragedy. The surgery went well. Sabrina recovered. The channel kept growing. The businesses are still running. By every external metric, the story has a good ending.
For a living, my boyfriend and I are on social media. We have a YouTube channel, and my boyfriend builds and modifies cars, and I'm the back end of the business. So I'm in the office with him every single day, helping come up with content ideas, whether it's like driving the cars, or we do a lot of videos of him teaching me how to drive these types of cars that are one-of-one builds that he spends a year.
But external metrics were never the right way to measure this. What TJ Hunt built, starting from a kid in Montreal who filmed paintball videos and then disappeared for 3 years, is genuinely remarkable. A clothing brand, a car parts company, a channel with hundreds of millions of views and more than 2 million subscribers. Cars he has described with real emotional weight. His first RX-7, his MK-5, Supra, the Skyline GTR he wants his grandchildren to have someday. And also, $360,000 in annual insurance bills that do not negotiate. An upload schedule that does not pause for grief or fear, or the kind of exhaustion that builds over a decade of public performance. A decade of public criticism that started before he even knew what he was doing and never really stopped. It just changed tone as the skills improved. A partner who went through 17 hours of brain surgery while the business kept running because it had to. A burnout real and serious enough that he talked about walking away from the whole thing. Openly, because the cost of continuing had become that honest a question. What most people watching TJ Hunt's channel are watching is the output. The build, the drift, the reveal, the finished car looking better than it started. The clean edit, the good music, the satisfying transformation from wrecked to spectacular.
I just spent about 10 minutes on the phone with Jordan from RK Tunes. I want to give a huge shout out to him. He sent us over a base map for this car.
What they are not watching is everything that runs underneath it. The financial treadmill that turns a dream car collection into a monthly obligation. The locked loop where the channel pays for the cars and the cars justify the channel, and neither can stop without the other collapsing. The human beings behind the brand navigating a medical crisis, while the upload schedule kept counting down. The part that doesn't resolve. So here's the deal. This story does not end with a lesson. He did not build the dream and discover it was empty. He built it and found out it was real and expensive and grinding, and also not something you can ever put down. The cars are still in the garage. The bills are still running. The algorithm is still watching. And none of that machinery cares how tired the person feeding it actually is. Sabrina is still here, still 4% of that tumor away from the life she rebuilt. The doctors are watching. The follow-up appointments are still on the calendar. That 4% is not a footnote. It is a number that lives in the back of the room during every good day, every normal day, every day that looks fine from the outside. And TJ is still uploading, still building, still running the companies, managing the employees, paying the insurance, keeping the machine fed, because the machine has to be fed.
and it's the fact that you have to relocate the coolant reservoir. The single turbo is in a really cool place, very similar to Twan's F80 M3. The single turbo is going to sit about right here. Because the turbo sits here, this has got to get moved. So we had Nick come down to kind of help us with a little bit of direction on where it's supposed to go.
That is not a choice anymore. It is the architecture of the life he built. The $360,000 insurance bill alone requires an income that comes from exactly one place. The employees get paid because the videos go up. The parts company exists because the channel keeps the audience that makes it viable. Every single piece of the empire is bolted to a camera that cannot stop rolling. What most people watching TJ Hunt's channel will never fully understand is that the channel itself is no longer optional. It is not a creative decision on any given week. It is structural. It is load-bearing. You take it away, and the rest comes down with it. He has talked about burnout real enough to consider walking away. He has talked about the work/life balance being the toughest part. He has said, plainly, that it takes every ounce of effort you've got. And he said that before the phone call, before the hospital, before the 7 days of waiting, before the 17-hour surgery, before the 4% that is still sitting there, he is still here, still building. Hands down one of the most successful automotive creators on YouTube, and somewhere underneath all of it, underneath the brands and the follower counts and the sentimental cars in the garage, there is a person paying $360,000 a year just to stay in. The game, sitting next to a woman who will spend the rest of her life being monitored for what is still inside her head. The next video will go up on schedule, because it has to. That is the heartbreaking story of TJ Hunt. If this changed how you see what's really behind the content you watch every week, hit subscribe and share this video, because the stories underneath the highlights are always the ones worth knowing.